Hello and welcome to another episode of the Embodied Union podcast. I'm Lindsay.
I'm Charlie.
And today we're going to be talking about monumentally fucking it up in relationship and what to do when you do that, or if you have ever done that.
I think everybody has fucked up at some point. I think it's part of the human experience.
Making mistakes.
Make mistakes. We get it wrong. We do dumb shit.
And sometimes we're not so innocent about it.
Yeah.
It can happen. We can make actual mistakes and we can do premeditated things that
Which is not a mistake.
Which is not a mistake, which, you know, comes to the other end of the spectrum of like really owning it sometimes. Like, yes, we can make mistakes that are accidents, and then there's actually
fucking up.
Really fucking up. And you know, what to do in relationship if we do that, and kind of what constitutes maybe even like the end of a relationship. So I guess we're going to cover over a few things today. Is there something in particular?
I just want to ask you a question. What's the biggest fuck up you've made in relationship that you've been like, I'm going to own that?
Yeah,
is there anything that comes to mind?
There is, but it's kind of like a personal responsibility piece. I don't think I've ever crossed anything that's that bad that it's like is the end of a relationship. I definitely, and I've spoken about it on the podcast, where I might have crossed sexual boundaries of my partner because of my desire that I had in the moment.
As in, you knew that she didn't really want to,
yeah,
but you just
did
knew
it
what
anyway.
you wanted
yeah,
to.
Basically along those lines. And I feel like that when I was younger was something. I feel like any time I've done that in, you know, recent years has been like, it's been like a misunderstanding or like a unintentional thing that's happened that I've then, you know, course corrected or apologized for or whatever. So I think that's basically the biggest ones. The big one for me is just like staying in relationship that I shouldn't have stayed in for so long. That is like the biggest fuck up that I've had in a relationship.
That's like a kind of a fuck up to yourself.
That's right. That's what I mean. It's like I don't feel like I've ever done anything that's that bad that's kind of done that. And admittedly, it's because I was in such a long relationship where it's like I didn't do that. Like I don't cheat or I don't do things. I definitely, in open relating, when I was open relating, there was definitely things that I did that were kind of like unintentional fuck ups, or times where I felt like I was in integrity but I was actually out of integrity. And that's really hard because the lines in open relating are so blurred that it's kind of like you're constantly managing something that's on fire, basically, you know. So
yeah, I've never seen open relating done well and someone's feelings not hurt, so I can understand that there would be some fuck ups.
Yeah, definitely.
When you're playing inside that dynamic.
Yeah, it's like a perpetual fuck up, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to put that back onto you.
I don't feel as innocent as you. I've definitely, in the past, I have cheated. I've cheated on a partner. And I think that's probably the big one. The big fuck up. And when I was younger, it's just like, not to make an excuse, but drinking and partying and just getting carried away. And yeah, the consequence of what comes after that is so awful. And back then I didn't have the skills of relationship, didn't know how to repair. So I'd often try and minimize like what I've done, not really know how to take responsibility for it, try and just like avoid it, try and pressure, repair quickly, like let's just come back to being in love, like you can't just hold this against me, like not allowing the other person to have their experience of being hurt. So like that's probably my big fuck up. And I just didn't handle it well back then, you know, and I think that's maybe some of the gold we'll give in this episode, because people, we do fuck up, we do make mistakes, and like how can we come back into repair, or what do we learn from it? Like what's the next step, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think, working for the last couple of years, working with men, it's like relationship's such a big, important part of our lives for us men that I know of, be sitting in circle and having clients come to me specifically around their relationship, but then not really having the skills to have an epic relationship. And I think often, guys are coming to me because the relationship isn't going well, and it's because there's a lot of water under the bridge.
Resentment.
Yeah. And boundaries have been crossed and agreements have been broken and those sorts of things. And it's kind of like there's a desire to repair and come back to as it was. But it's kind of, I wonder sometimes, like, maybe what's the line of having this relationship continue or not?
Well, I think that's why every relationship needs the really explicit spoken agreements around, like, what's a no? Like, what's just an absolute deal breaker? I think some people, they don't have these conversations around agreements, and then they get in trouble down the line because it's, well, you just should have known.
Yeah.
And it's just like, yes, we assume that our partner's not going to cheat on us, but it's just like, especially if you're doing something like open relating, it's like explicit agreements around what is a yes, what is a no, what is, if you break that, I'm out.
Yeah. I think that's really important. It's, all those things. It's around, like, what do we both value? What do we both want? Do we both want kids? Does one of us want one and one of us doesn't? Does it... Oh, the list can go on. Protected sex, sexual health clinic checkups, that sort of thing. Previous partners, lying, like what constitutes fucking up? What is it, specifically? Do we want to cover over maybe some of ours, or do we want to cover over some of the things that we've sort of supported couples through?
What I wanted to just name before that I got from what you were saying, when we work with people, what I'm realizing is many couples, they don't have the skills to have an epic relationship, but they also don't have the skills to repair a mediocre relationship. So people get in this really stuck place of not knowing how to create the depth they really want, and then also not knowing how to fix, like, the fires, like, that's a really hard place.
Definitely. And people are kind of sometimes in that codependent, like, can't leave either. Like, they know it's mediocre, they know their partners cross their boundaries plenty, and yet stay. I see that as well. And it's like, desperately want it to be better, but also don't know how to leave, don't know how to call it a day when it's like...
Well, you can speak into that from your own experience, right?
Yeah.
I think we named it at the beginning, the big fuck up you did was staying too long in a relationship and ultimately crossing your own boundaries for the hope that it could go back to what it was or be different somehow, or...
Yeah, and just having the reality check that it was never going back to how it was, because relationships don't really go back. That's probably something that, everyone needs to understand and learn at some point, is that the honeymoon period is just that. It is a season. It's very chemically driven, and if you're in it or you've experienced it,
the honeymoon,
enjoy it while it lasts. Like, of course you can extend it and prolong it and all those things, but it's not a forever thing. And I think you want to be able to savor it as much as possible when you are having it, because it is such an amazing time and experience. But it's just like, it's not forever. So once you're out of it, it's, in my opinion, it's almost borderline delusional for somebody to wish they're going to get back to it, because it's not a going back. There's just a, how do we continue to deepen and strengthen the relationship through history, through connection, through experience, through repair, through shared values, making agreements and building a relationship, not just chemically having a great one at the beginning.
Well, I think that really speaks to the silver lining there, that although the honeymoon phase is a moment in time that will never, it can't come back because it's based on novelty, right? But what you can create is almost better than the honeymoon. It's very different. It's more settled and solid and safe, and nervous systems are more chilled out. But you can create more depth and more, like, intimacy once you come out the honeymoon phase, started to manage some of the conflict that comes up, and then you get to really go deep together. So it's like the end of the honeymoon, you grieve the end of the honeymoon, but knowing that there is something even more expansive and beautiful available if you have the skills of relationship, and if you have the skills to manage any fuck-ups, yours, repair.
Yeah, and I think so, yes, coming back to that piece of what do we do when we are trying to, you know, get the relationship back to where it was, so to speak, is what, like, you're going to have mishaps and misunderstandings and breakdowns in relationship. It is inevitable. You are in a relationship to heal the parts of you. I mean, I know that one of those coaches, Jag, he talks about that, like the individuation process of, like, you know, becoming your own sovereign person and then also being in relationship. But it's just, your relationships are truly going to bring your stuff up. You know, anything that's unhealed in you is going to be exposed in your relationship. So I think it's really important to know that you might not have healed certain things in your life, and in being in a relationship and trying to heal those things, you might make monumental fuck-ups in your relationship that actually destroy the relationship.
Do you want to give some examples?
I think, and it varies for each person, but honestly, I think some of the cardinal sins of relationship is knowingly breaking agreements that you do have. And that's just for the couples that actually have made agreements. Not many do. Cheating is typically one. Lying is typically another. I think, is there any others? I'm trying to think if there's really anything else that ends a relationship. I think sometimes it's like real differences in parenting can do it as well. That's what I've seen in myself, and I've seen in
would you
other
say that's a
relationships.
fuck up though? Because it's really just two different value systems.
Kinda, and that's what I mean. Like, to me, it's like,
I think the big fuck ups, like there's definitely more like sinister things that can go on, like if someone's narcissistic, if we've got some borderline, but like the typical...
Addictions. Addictions are something that definitely breaks a relationship.
And lying about addictions.
Exactly. It's like gambling, because it can be like put financial strain on couples. Pornography addiction can like ruin safety around sex and intimacy. It's things like that, you know, drugs that like have a detrimental effect, and also like a detrimental health effect on the person that's addicted, and then putting the other person at risk of their own health. Like, say they use needles or they do something that's like really big that impacts the, you know, them themselves, but also then their partner. I think that's something to consider.
So there's some of like the big fuck ups, and then there's little things like the white lies or omitting the truth, the omission of truth, and unspoken words, and like all of those little things as well.
Emotional cheating.
Emotionally cheating, which to me is cheating. That's in the same category as cheating.
Yeah. And that's where it might vary for other people.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, this is where agreements are really important. Charlotte and I have sat down and spoken about like what constitutes what. Like, let's get really clear here, so I don't cross your boundaries in our agreements, you know?
So for example, I remember early on we made an agreement around how we would handle outside energy.
Yeah.
So say I got a flirty little DM from a stranger, how would Lindsay like me to manage that? Is it like I don't reply at all? Would I reply politely? Would I slam them? Like, what was it? And vice versa. If you get a woman sneaking into yours, how would I like you to handle that? And so we've had that conversation, like that was early.
Yeah.
But like things like that, things that you don't think to talk about, it's like, how do we want to navigate this?
Yeah. You know, friends with the opposite sex is a yes or a no. Like, just like the list can go on and on and on. And I think it's really important. Yeah, and this is all in service to the relationship, not having assumptions being made where boundaries get crossed and we're having a relationship that is then reactive rather than proactive. Because I think this is what happens a lot of the time is, say I did something that was very innocent on my behalf and I didn't think it was a big deal, but actually for you it's a huge deal. It's then I've just like done something unknowingly and now it's causing a huge impact on our relationship, and yet I didn't even know that it was going to be an issue.
And I think like these are the things we can't name everything, you know, like
Totally.
we don't even know, like you figure these things out as you go along, and it's like, oh, we need an agreement around that because we have two different models of the world and we have two different expectations from partnership.
Yeah, but and that's the thing, it's just like otherwise it's, you know, it could be as simple as recreational drugs. Say, you know, either of us went out, I don't do drugs, so it's just like, it's not a thing that I think about, but it's like, say I'm out with my friends and then I get really high somehow. And then yeah, whoops, you know, like, but then that could be something in your past that's really triggering, like an ex-partner could have done something or gotten high and then done something bad, and it brings up something for you and it feels really like a boundary's been crossed, like you don't like that, you know, and then it's up to me to then make sure that we repair, you know, and set a new agreement around what we do. And I think that's important as well. It's like there's all those things where it's accidental and then you get to have a conversation about it. I think there needs to be a level of not flexibility, but like compassion that we didn't know for both of us. It's like now we're really clear that that's a boundary or that's an agreement we need to tighten up. But what I'm sort of thinking is, say there's an agreement around we use protection with each other.
Sexually?
Just for example. No, I pack a gun. No. So we use a condom when we have sex because you don't want to fall pregnant or you're not on birth control, whatever. And then I don't use it with you. You know, we just like do something and then in the moment we kind of like just decide, but really it's a boundary cross. Like to me, that's a real problem. You know, like that's a boundary cross where we both know that it's something that we don't want to be doing, and I do it, I make the decision to. It's like, I don't bring one, but I still want to have sex, you know? Things like that where we're like knowingly breaking agreements and knowingly doing the wrong thing. It's just like every time we do something in our relationship that we know is wrong and we do it anyway, it creates damage.
Yeah, it disrupts the integrity and the safety, you know, like even if we then had a conversation around, oh, it's fine, like it happens, there's a little part of me that's like, I don't trust this man.
Yeah.
You know, I might not even be overly conscious of it, but there's definitely like a disrupt, you know, my nervous system isn't as safe as it could be, knowing that this man he is in integrity with himself, with the agreements that he makes, I can trust him.
Yeah. And I think too, then going from that place of, if I knowingly break an agreement and then there's an impact, it's also then kind of needing to give the other person the time and space and I guess belief that I'm sorry, you know, and that I have made a mistake and that I've owned it. But I also then don't continue to push you or rush you or invalidate you to come back into repair earlier than you need to. I've seen this in relationship too. There's, say I make a mistake, I'll just use me as an example. I make a mistake in the relationship and I do something that's really bad. Say I cheated. And that really is grounds for the relationship to end.
Oh yeah.
You know? But then there's a part of you that's like really likes me and really wants me to not do that and wants to really make the relationship work. It's kind of, if you're in that process of like, fuck, what do I do? And I feel really guilty or upset and I'm trying to repair it, you know, then it puts strain on both of us to then come back to repair or to end the relationship if that's what's needed, you know, because that's the grounds, you know, like if we make the agreement, was like one of our agreements was like, if one of us wanted to open relate, would that be the end of our relationship? And that is, you know? So it's like, I know because I've had the lived experience, and you know because that's your choice, you know somehow. Then,
Well,
yeah.
I've had the lived experience momentarily.
Yeah. So I think that's something to consider as well. Like for the listeners, it's when we make really big mistakes, you know, sometimes we have to learn to own the fact that it might be the end of our relationship if we've done something like that. Because putting it back together actually doesn't work. You know, trying to force it back together. When we're a kid and we break something, we can't just push it all back together and it be fixed. Some things don't go back together, you know. So what else? What else are we going to speak into?
Well, I think that really kind of comes around to when we fuck up in relationship, big fuck up, small fuck up, whatever it is, something has happened, there's been rupture. How do we navigate it with as much ease and like reverence and respect, you know? So you touched on it. And this is what I didn't do in the past with my fuck up, you know, like cheating on a partner. I didn't give it the time and space to let him have his feelings, to validate his feelings and just to respect that, because I was so guilty and so anxious and so codependent. I couldn't give it the space that it needed, so it's like pushing for repair faster, because I couldn't sit in the discomfort of like being the bad guy. So now I wouldn't cheat, but if I make a mistake, you know, I know that I have to own it. I have to own what it is I have done. I have to validate what it has created for you, what it has created for the relationship, and I have to give you space to be in your experience. And say I did cheat on you, then the ball's really in your court, you know? Me trying to pressure you to like repair with me faster or let's make it better, that's not okay. You know, I have to allow you to go through what you need to go through, and maybe there is space and room for repair, and maybe there isn't. But I think the key to moving through your fuck-ups is self-responsibility. Like not making excuses, like not lying, not trying to avoid what has happened, like own it fully. Like I work with women. One woman comes to mind and her partner is cheated and he can't be with the discomfort of that, so he won't really talk about it, you know? Or it's just like, another client comes to mind where the woman, she's not quite is not repaired for her. So she needs to talk about it. Like we need to, my nervous system is still rattled. And then what she's getting from her partner is, oh, you're just going to hold this against me forever. Like, can't we just move on? Again, because the person can't sit with the discomfort of having done something. You know, so.
I think that's really big parts in that. I think that, you know, the validating, I think it just comes down to like our ego thinking that, not that we're better than we are, but I think we have an image of ourselves of being amazing and not getting anything wrong and dealing with either loss or failure or mistakes. You know, in life, when we fail or make a mistake or do something wrong, it's like, what is our relationship to ourselves as far as, can I be the bad guy? Can I be the person that made the mistake, and can I be okay with that? Not to say that I'm like keen to go and do it and to, you know, embody the badness in me or the fuck up in me, but it's just like when I do something like that, what am I like? What's my relationship like to losing, to loss, to fucking up?
And what I know for myself in the past and what I've heard women tell me is when their partner has fucked up, it's not even about the fuck up. They just want them to come clean about it, like to fully own it, take responsibility for it. Tell me that you fucked up. Tell me tell me what I need to know, and like, let's work on repair. And when they don't get that because their partner can't take responsibility, that just drags out the rupture.
That's right.
You know, and I just know that for myself in the past, I couldn't sit with being the bad guy, so I didn't want to talk about it anymore. Why do we have to keep going back there? But that just actually extends the upset.
So true.
I think it could be important, or maybe just interesting, like why people... Are you okay if I use an example from our relationship? So, like why people lie, like why they get stuck in a lie. You know, we had something come up a while ago, and it was like I caught you out in the moment, and the automatic response was to deny and lie. And I knew what was happening. There was a part of me that was like, knew you were in freeze, knew you were in collapse, knew you were in panic, knew you were lying. And also and I think that happens for so many of us when we go, like the thought of like being caught out in something is so dangerous, or it's just, we can't hold it. So like in your experience, what was happening in your body, knowing that I'm like, tell me the truth, but that just wasn't an option for you in the moment.
Yeah. And I know this because, you know, monumental fuck-ups for me have been very few. And so I will say that I know in that moment, it wasn't completely a lie what I was lying about. There was some truth in it, and there was some lie to it. So I know that for myself wasn't a complete lie, and it wasn't the complete truth. So in the split second, it was like there's a part of me that felt like I could defend myself or deny it. But the truth is that there was a part of me that was in complete terror around it. And I know for myself, and I think this is the question that you're asking, is like what happened, or what was happening in that moment, is that for me an overwhelm is that there was an impact of being caught out when I was younger that have dire physical consequences. So it would be that the being caught doing something wrong could be very dangerous growing up. And so I feel like that is something that's still a resonant, or has a echo of the past that is still there. And once I'd come out of the initial, like, this is what had happened, then I was willing to own it.
But I think it's just a really interesting point, because I think this is what's happening for a lot of men and women when they get caught out in something. The automatic response is very habitual. It's like autopilot. It happens almost automatically.
Yes.
It's like defend or die.
Yes.
You know, and like sitting with shame and guilt can also be like a death, you know? It's like a part of your ego does need to die.
It is.
However, like, I don't think many people are that skilled with sitting with the uncomfortable feelings. And I know that's a big part of what we teach. So that's why I say not many people are that like versed in it, because it's fucking uncomfortable. Like to really sit in your shame or your guilt or your terror or whatever it is. Like I think like once we can do that, once we can face what is coming up inside of us, and we can look it in the eye or walk into the center of it, and then we don't die, maybe a part of us dies, we then can own ourselves more. We can own our experience more, and we can move forward. We can learn.
Yeah, and that's, to me, what I really see is what hurts us in relationship and what makes us hurt our partners the most is where we are in denial with ourselves. That's the big impact. So anything that you've got hiding, denying, or repressing in yourself is likely something that will hurt your partner. And that although your partner isn't the person that created the hurt, they'll be affected by whatever you haven't dealt with, you know? And I think that is really why I find it so important that when we do relationship work with people, is we're really getting the individuals to really look at their own stuff, because it's actually that is what causes the biggest, you know, issues or, like chronic things that happen in their relationship, whether it's already happened, is happening, or is going to happen, is the stuff within their own psyche, their own self.
It's internal conflict that creates external conflict.
That's right.
To loop right back around to what you said at the very beginning, relationship is just designed to expose your unhealed parts.
Yeah.
That is the deepest, what I believe is the deepest purpose of being in relationship.
And it's why I see so often is couples are trying to stay together that are codependent, that have both hurt each other so much, but want the other person to heal it for them, or to say sorry, or to do whatever it is that the individual actually needs to do for themselves. And that's been my experience, like staying in a relationship, or wanting that person to be honest, or own the truth, or not be in denial. And
You're
it's
in
like,
denial.
and that was, yeah, and it was
Right.
just like, oh my goodness, like they are never going to give me the answer I want, that I can see plain as day. I need to just not be in this relationship, you know, and have to own the fact that it's going to be hard to not be in that, you know, because it's for many reasons, you know, often at times. So yeah, really big stuff. And like, we make fuck ups in relationship. This is what happens, you know, and it's not that it's never going to happen. It's like, how are we preparing for it, you know?
Well, I think every smart relationship, smart couple, especially if you're doing our work, like they have a conflict plan. We have a conflict plan. Like now when stuff comes up, there is permission for space.
You did it today. Yeah.
What happened today?
Nothing big, but it was just like, oh, I feel a trigger.
No, but I'm talking about if like something conflict happens.
Oh, okay. Good.
And you actually need to like have the plan. Like, okay, we're going to take 30 minutes. We're going to take 60 minutes. And when we take that time, we're going to use it for self-inquiry. When we come back together, we're going to do our best to just own our part. I'm responsible for this part, this part, this part, this part, this part. And then when both parties do that, it's just like, it always comes down to self-responsibility, really.
And what do you think, and I could get myself into a lot of trouble here, but okay, let's just say everyone struggles with self-responsibility. Why is that?
I know what you wanted to say. And I would challenge you on that.
I totally agree.
I would challenge you.
And most women
He wants
would
to say women. Why do women struggle with self-responsibility? And I will challenge you on that, because it's not agenda specific, it's humans.
It's so human.
It's humans.
And I'll add that I hang around some guys that are pretty self-responsible, so I'm...
And scorned, including yourself, you know? So it's like, I get it. But it's like...
I just think men are not self-responsible either, and I so get that. I so see that.
But
what
you
is
do
it?
have a wound.
Yeah. What is that? Like,
Yeah.
what is it? So to me, it's got something to do with the ego, for sure.
Well, it's just, I don't think... Before you start doing self-development, you don't even have the level of awareness that you're creating everything, that your stuff is playing out, that you are being dictated by programs that you have had in your psyche since you were a child. You don't even have that level of awareness. So it just feels like you're constantly at the effect of everything around you. It's like, I feel this way because you did this to me. You did this. I feel like this because you did this. You know, there's this you. And I think that's habitual. I think most people are operating like that. And when you're operating with the you created this, that's a victim mentality. There's no self-responsibility. And then when you start doing this work, you become aware that you are actually creating all of it. And yes, other people can impact you. Their language, their behavior can impact you, but you're still making it mean something. That's why you're getting triggered, you know, like you're still the creator of your experience.
So in that case, because I think this is where people would probably disagree with that, it's, let's say we're in relationship, we have an agreement that we don't cheat, and then I cheat, and what you're saying is like,
how can I take responsibility for this? I would be looking at, how did I pick a partner who had the capacity to cheat with me? How did I ignore like any signs that were there?
Yeah.
And how am I, like, and if I'm considering staying, how am I not choosing myself? It doesn't mean that, oh, you've cheated on me and it's my responsibility, so I'm going to stay. It doesn't mean I condone shit behavior, but it's like, what about me got me in this relationship?
Good.
How did I put myself here? I have chosen to be here. I chose this person. That is my responsibility. And I'm still not in alignment with a cheater, so I'm still going to exit out.
Yeah, because where I see people stuff that one up is they are hurt, say you're hurt by what I did, and that hurt is actually what keeps you staying in the relationship. It's like, you're not gonna go be responsible for your own hurt. You're gonna keep the blame over here with me, and by keeping the blame on me keeps you in the relationship. I watched that as well.
Because then it's
happen.
like, I'm mad at you, so you need to do something for it to be
That's
different,
right.
and how dare you? And I'm staying because I'm actually in fear. I'm in fear because who else will love me? Maybe there's nobody else. Maybe breaking up is really big. Maybe we have to separate houses and dogs and children. And it's just like, people often stay because of fear and not good enough. I'm not good enough.
I won't find anyone else.
It's a big one, scarcity and lack. But it's just like, what really needs to happen. And I'm not saying if your partner cheats on you, you have to leave. I've seen repair happen if both parties are willing. But it's like, don't focus on the other. Really take a look at yourself and like, what do you stand for? Is this in alignment with your values? And if it is not, then how are you going to choose you?
It's really big, you know, this whole conversation. And I know we might have jumped around today, but it's just like, it is a absolute landmine of a topic that I think really couples need to be having these conversations around. What are we in agreement for? What's aligned for us? What's an absolute no? Like, I am so glad we have agreements set up in our relationship from early on, because we've had so much experience in relationship of what we've either done or didn't like or don't want, that we're able to ask of each other or present and self-reveal what our agreements are, so we don't have to be reactive. Like we did the other day, like, I've never sworn at you, right? We did something the other day where I joked and I said something. And
Oh, you
you're
called
like,
me a bitch.
yeah. And so, but I didn't call you one.
No, you weren't seriously calling me a bitch. But I was like, oh, you've never called me, you don't name call me. And I take that for granted because in previous relationships there was name called a lot.
Right.
Now we have like an agreement where it's like, we fucking don't do that. We do not name call.
Yeah.
We do not attack. We do not.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like the level of relationship, because we have agreements where we're just so clear on how we're going to treat each other, that we don't have to then hurt each other.
I just want to add as well, because I've been in relationship before where it's like, maybe we didn't have formal agreements, but it definitely was like, don't call me names. And then my partner would call me names, but because there was never a consequence, he knew that he could do it and I wasn't going to go anywhere. Whereas the feeling I have with you, and I've had this from the beginning, is if I cross your boundary, you will leave. You will choose you. And I feel that so strongly, and that pulls me into line. You know, it's like, I am not going to do something because that would damage the integrity of the relationship, because I know that you will leave because it means I'm not in alignment with you. So me knowing that there will be consequences is also what calls me forward. And so people, when you're in relationship, if you say this is a boundary or this is what I'm in agreement, and your partner crosses it and there are no consequences, then it wasn't even a boundary, it was a suggestion. So you have to be willing to, if you have an agreement and your partner breaks it, then you have to deliver the consequences. You have to choose you. You have to stand firm in like the repercussions. Otherwise, we teach people how to treat us. And if it's just,
You can treat me however you like.
pretty much that's what you're saying. If you're crossing my boundary and I'm like, oh, don't do that, and I'm going to stay, then I'm just, please don't please don't hurt me. But it's not like that's what I'm saying with my words, but the evidence is that I'm going to stay regardless.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the step that I'm always harping on about is if you have agreements, they are the rules and the boundary is the consequence. You know, it's just like, then the consequence or the boundary is like the line that I'm going to draw is like, we have an agreement that we don't name call each other, and the boundary is, or the agreement, well, yeah, the consequence is that, you know, I won't tolerate that in a relationship, you know? And then, therefore, we don't have to then find out what's going to happen if I do it. Because in the moment when it's heated, and this is what all couples have to face, is we have, when we're in a heightened state and we're in overwhelm, we do sometimes say and do things that we're not proud of.
Yes.
And what I know is name calling's not an option. And I know that for a fact. So when it gets heated, I just know that it's just like, that doesn't even come into my mind. Like that I want to do that, or I can, or it's an option. It's not even an option.
I feel that so strongly. But I also know for some couples, like, because every couple has different agreements, right? So for some people, I'm working with a woman now, and it's just like, I want to have the agreement that I don't want you to speak to me in this way, or I don't want you to speak like this in the home. But I also know my partner, that has been his habit for so many years, the agreement is going to get broken. And I don't want to break up with him if he breaks it. I just want to know that he's making his best efforts. So if you're making those kind of agreements and knowing that there's going to be some fall down, it's like making the agreement that if the agreement is broken, we're going to have a repair conversation as soon as possible. We're not just going to leave it, because we're actually working really hard on upholding the agreements, but we are rewiring new ways of being with each other, and we're going to fuck up.
Yes.
So you have those agreements that are a little bit grey, but you're always going to work towards repair. And then you have the ones that are like, if you cheat on me, I'm going to leave.
Yes. I think that,
stop.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. I think what you just said then is like so true, and needs to be like some grace and some learning process of making change, which is, again, very individual for each other. Like we need to be taking self-responsibility in our relationship of what do we need to repair or heal for ourselves. And what I'm trying to repair or work on is very different to what you're learning and doing differently, right? Like even for both of us, we don't have the same things that we're trying to work towards. Sometimes they're different. Like for me, it's around learning how to self-reveal and in being in the practice of self-revealing.
And for me, it's learning how to lean into repair when it's offered, which I'll just say I'm doing a very good job. Wouldn't you agree?
You are, sweetheart. There's an agreement that I can agree to and agree with. Most patootiest.
Cutie. Love you.
Well, I hope that we've covered most of it.
It was a bit round and about and jumping around, but I think some really important points were made, and I think the key is self-responsibility, ownership, vulnerability, like having agreements, repair conversations, like everything that we always talk about. It's so important. And
just like for ourselves is like owning the badness or the bad guy in us all, that we have a false sense, and that our ego, however inflated sometimes, is worth, you know, looking at and dissecting and breaking down a little bit so we can become more of our truest self, more authentic self. I think that's so important in relationship, that we're both bringing that to the relationship for its growth, and we're in service to our relationship. I love you, Critter.
Love you. Thank you guys for listening. You know where to find us. I am Charlie S. Hannah on Instagram.
I'm just making memes at Lindsay B on Instagram.
He's just making memes. Yeah. And the Embodied Union Instagram and podcasts. If you have any questions or any topics you want us to speak into, just hit us up. We always like to be of service.
Absolutely.
Leave it there.
Thanks, Critter.
Thank you, my love.